And we're live. All right. Good morning, guys. So we're here live again this morning with my sidekick, Danielle. And Danielle and I are talking with Shawn Bean this morning. And I'm so excited to talk with Shawn. He seems like a really cool guy. Shawn is the founder of Matrix Health and Wellness, and he specializes in biochemical pathways and gene expression, which is so interesting to me from my breast implant illness perspective and overall just on my wellness journey perspective. So I'm really excited to hear what he has to share with us. He is the husband of his wife, who's becoming a nurse practitioner, which is very exciting. So they're both into the wellness field, and she is pregnant with twins right now, which is so exciting. Congratulations, Shawn. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning.
It's a pleasure, absolute pleasure to be here with you guys, to share my experiences and knowledge that we can bring forth in this, situation that we're dealing with.
Absolutely. Danielle, the only thing I want to do right before we hear from Shawn, did you want to do a disclaimer?
Oh, yes. Thank you for the reminder. Anything that we cover on Get This Off My Chest, any of the practitioners from here out and today, this is not specific medical guidance for individuals. We can't assess you and we can't treat you. We're going to share our experiences. A lot of times you can use the education for support, but definitely before trying anything on the program, check with a practitioner so you can be safe and not sorry.
Awesome. Thank you, Danielle. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask, and I will make sure that Shawn or Danielle are able to try to answer those for you as we go. So Shawn, I think it would be great if we start. I just really want to know, in your practice, what is it that you do with your clients? So say we'll start with breast implant illness. Now I know that that's obviously not the only type of client you're treating, but you have seen one or two people who have come in with breast implant illness. Is your experience with women who have had their implants out already or prior to getting them out?
I have the pleasure to have different experiences with pre and post. And there's, as you know, there's different types of criteria that, we tend to see. Normally, I followed one that was before explants, and we addressed her symptoms to a specific degree with, just traditional functional medicine approach, which resolved about 67% of the problems. And then I told her, I'm like, you're an IFBB pro. I mean, do you really want to have these issues? These are some things that, I would encourage you to look into. And she decided to get the explants out because she was having problems with mold. Okay. And again, a lot of her symptoms cleared up, 70% of them. And then once we took the implants out, she noticed that there was a significant decrease in her mold sensitivity.
Right.
She was having mold sensitivity before, but the sensitivity decreased after she had the explants.
Right.
So, Shawn, curious, like this was your first BII, breast implant illness person?
No, this was a very recent one.
Oh, okay. I'm curious, like, especially because you're a man, and and you usually, I've known of you for 2 years now since meeting Elisma, and over a year, like you usually get things right. And you're usually like, crazy like white on rice, right? So I'm curious, like when you got the 60% or the 70% like what was in your head? Like, I cuss on the show. I say like, what the fuck, right? So right. Like, I wonder what, like as a practitioner, newly exposed to this stuff, I mean, were you ever thinking it's a foreign object? And like, what was your thought process? Because the goal for me in taking these hours is to teach to get practitioners to start thinking about this, whether it's breast implants, hips, pacemakers, IUDs, dental implants?
When you've been in this field for so long, things just come naturally to you. And when it's like, I'll give the person the option. I'm like, listen, if we get you 60, 70% better and your symptoms are attainable, the choice to move on is up to you. I like to use it as last resort. And I had multiple cases like that to where, hey, you have the choice to do it. I always give the person the option. Okay. Hey, it's an option, but if we get you 60, 70, 80% better your symptoms and you're happy with that, then it's your choice to go on to take the next step. Okay. You can also think of it as something to do preventatively. So they're given the option. And if they choose to, great. If they don't,
yeah, and
an option.
And more curious, what made you even think, hey, it might be your breast implants?
It's just when you get to a certain state and they've talked with their buddies and they talk, they're getting the word out around the fitness community because she was an IFBB pro, and she was more health conscious because she was actually a colonic masseuse, she was colonics. So she was already in alternative health. So
Right.
the choice was much more easier for her than to try to convince somebody. Another breast implant I worked with, it was, blatant obvious because we tried everything. There was a parasite and we joked about it. We called him Lenny. Well, Lenny hung around for a long, long time. And she was we tried everything on her and it just wasn't working. And it was like 4 to 6 months. And I put my foot down and said, listen, the next, last resort, you got to get these things out, because it's messing you up. This is one of those cases where she was a fitness enthusiast and speaker. And what happened is she was getting frustrated because she had to go on a 1,200 calorie diet to maintain her gains on her diet. So they tried reverse dieting. That didn't work. I'm like, listen, you're playing around with your thyroid. We played around with your gut. You went to the top specialist in New York. You identified there's a parasite. You tried parasitic approaches. Then it's time to sit back and take a look, say, hey, you've tried everything. Do you want to spend another $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 chasing a rabbit down the hole? Or do you want to do the explant? And he actually went on to do the explant. And that is one of those cases that was like instant gratification. Within, you could see the change in the inflammatory condition in her face and just total decrease of systemic inflammation. She was the happiest person on earth that she decided this solution. And as a result, what happened is she's now, I guess she's about a year post, but even within 4 months, you could see the changes. And she's eating more calories than she's ever ate before in her life, and not half.
I want to be her.
But that was one of those cases to where, hey, we tried everything. The next step would be this. And she was one of those instant rebounders. Boom. She didn't have to worry about taking B vitamins. She didn't have to worry about taking all her supplements and stuff. Her body went back to the way it was naturally.
That's awesome. Shawn, do you know how long she had her implants by chance?
It was about 2.5 years.
Okay. So yeah.
And we started, when I went back to the timeline, it was about 6 months after the implants that she started to notice the change in the metabolism and just not feeling what she was.
Right.
And she was an avid sushi eater too, which led credence to the higher probability of the parasite. And it was found.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's an interesting fact. I didn't know that. I mean, it makes sense now that I hear you say it out loud, but I never really thought about that.
Yeah, because what happened is because she was an avid sushi eater and because of the implants, it made me think about the immunological the immunological dysfunction going on. So it made her more vulnerable because she used to eat the stuff like nonstop in the past and have no problems. But ever since she got the implants, her body was more vulnerable. I mean, gas, bloating, automated bowel movements, everything. And we have them, you know, that's one of the cases that you have the we never did the post because there was no sense of doing it, because there's no sense of having her spend hundreds of dollars when it was not necessary.
Right.
You know, the C-reactive proteins all came down, her liver enzymes came back in check, and I was just happy with that. And the fact that she was responding clinically was the most significant. And she's at least a year and a half out now, post explant, and she's living life. And it's, you know, she's very, very happy with that decision.
That's awesome. And I think it's great for you, Shawn, because it seems like you knew her before, you knew her during the implants, and now you're seeing her after. So you saw the transition, the wave go like, okay, she was great, she was okay, then she got the implants, and then she, you know, got them out and started coming down from everything. So that's pretty amazing that you had that experience as a practitioner.
Yeah, and we didn't have to look at the genetics. We didn't have to, I think we did the organic acid test. I think we did hormone testing. I think we did the blood work. As soon as I saw in the blood work that her vitamin D 125 and 25 was off, which is the active form versus the inactive form, that was a red flag. As soon as I see that ratio skew with a 1.5 ratio, I know that we're dealing with some type of an autoimmune response, Lyme, mold, or some type of, you know, HSV1, Epstein, some kind of viral load, because that's the red flag. And when I worked with one of the more prominent speakers of the breast 4 years ago, I told her, said, you got Lyme or mold going on here. And actually, it was her breast implants that was shifting the 125 ratio.
Well, what's interesting too, do you know what she had? Saline or silicone, because, you know, they also can harbor mold, mildew, fungus.
Yeah, in that situation, what happened was she came to me about 6-7 years ago. I saw she wasn't feeling well. She was going through a lot of, you know, depression, and then I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. I kind of suspected mold, but then those are the type of people that hey, I'm feeling really, really good, and then all of a sudden they go off the radar. You don't hear from them again. And then they surface back up again 3 years later and like, oh yeah, I had my breast implants out and, you know, I'm feeling really good. But but they were giving me signs back then that I knew something.
Yeah.
But I told her, said, you either got mold or you got Lyme. And I didn't think it was Lyme because she didn't have the typical characteristics. So I was leaning towards mold, but we couldn't find anything in her environment. So it was just
right, but the environment was inside.
Correct. Exactly.
Which is crazy.
You
know, and
I think the most amazing one I had was post. The transition was like night and day. She was a person that every time that she traveled over to a specific part of Delaware, she would get like these allergy responses that she couldn't understand. It was like as soon as she crossed over the state line, it's like she had an inflammatory response. And she looked like she was a state marshmallow man. She was a fitness competitor, all into weight training.
Right.
And the one thing is I saw that. I'm like, I looked at her, severe depression, you know, all kinds of neurological conditions, everything. And when I looked at her genetics, when I looked at her organic acid, when I went back and looked at the organic acid test, I kind of made a suggestion. Well, I didn't know it back then, but you know, you got mold going on. Well, guess what? When her husband was away from work, she literally went downstairs and took a axe, and she slammed open the basement wall, ripped it all apart, and her husband came home. The house was demolished.
She was looking for mold?
She found it. I got pictures of it. It's disgusting. And
and the bill.
Right.
well, that was the start of it. And once she got out, she was doing good. But then every time she come across the state line, she would have problems again. And I'm like, hey, you've gone X, you've gone Z. We know that you have, breast implants, you're mold sensitive, you got all these unexplained allergies. And as soon as she took the implants out and showed me the pictures, it was like a totally different person. The face was like,
right.
chickmunk cheeks. And I saw her picture. I'm like, oh my God. The texture, the skin was unbelievable. And that was just like 4 weeks afterwards.
Yeah.
Man, I cannot wait for the fall. I cannot wait to get the clinicians together or do something like this. So people, Tara, we're going to talk about you in the third person, Shawn. Do you see his face when he discusses the difference? Like I have
He goes into this other place. Like it's very
like what?
You're very cool.
And so I just feel like this is, it's sometimes hard to wake up in the morning and get an hour, but Shawn, you just, I have to thank you because it just validated, I feel like this is like the Oprah show. You just validated, like just seeing your face and hearing it's almost like affirmation and acknowledgement. And I think there's 500,000 of us out there that need a Shawn.
When people come here, it's like, I've been down all the rabbit holes and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I'm looking right at you. Or what a lot of times they'll do is this on their intake form, because until you challenge them, they won't put it on there. And sometimes they'll come into my office, and being professional, you have to ask the questions saying, I've been around the bodybuilding field for almost 20, 25 years, and I have a set of trained eyes. Okay. And when something doesn't look natural. And you just have to very professionally say something, and they're like, I'm looking through your air code there. You're mentioning no surgical procedures, but did you have surgical augmentation? Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you I had breast implants.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's a huge part of the puzzle. And then you go on to explain why about the chemicals, how it affects the immune system, how it bleeds out into the lymph system, and how you've been to so many doctors and stuff like that and can't explain the situation when I respect that 100%, but I always tell them, sometimes you have to look past your nose or even underneath of it to find out where it's going on. And there are wonderful practitioners, and everybody has
and
this.
For that matter too, for people not to disclose that they have had liposuction, my God, and I've had it, right? So this is not a derogatory comment, but we need to disclose, especially to the functional medicine people, because that is your fascia, your lymph system, that is your hormones, your fat metabolism. I've had it, and transfer and all that, and I'm not sure where, like that is a immune system disruption, big effing time.
Well, the other thing too is you get these people that come in, 90% of my people are from the Facebook and things like that, and they don't come into the office, so it's sometimes hard to see. And sometimes I'll go on I want to see who I'm talking to, just out of curiosity. And so
let's tell people where you are. You're in Philadelphia area?
Well, I'm located outside Longwood Gardens, which is approximately 40 miles outside Philadelphia. I have a lot of people. Actually, the funniest thing is I have more people come in internationally than I do locally to my office. I have sometimes 1 or 2 people that fly in from UK. I had one guy fly in from Australia. And it was cheaper for them to fly in, see me, do the testing, and leave than it is to go in their own country to get it done for shipping.
Right.
So I'm like, why don't you come over? They come, because the beautiful thing about it is when they come over, they'll come for 2 days, they'll spend a day, go see me, then they can go right to the lab, get the blood test done, and then they'll go spend a day at Longwood Gardens, which is right down the street.
Yeah.
So you've got the best of both worlds because you've got the botanical gardens. It's the second largest one in the United States.
Yeah, that's nice. So do you see people, are you able to see people not in person, or can you only see people in person as well?
No. I can see people from anywhere in the world. As I mentioned before, most of my clients, 90% of them, are internet. And actually probably 50-60% of them are from outside the country.
Okay. All right. That's cool. So when we're done with this, Shawn, I'd like to put your information on the link so that people can reach out to you.
Sure.
If that's okay with you. And so going back, I feel like we're onto something here. I feel like the three of us need to somehow infiltrate the bodybuilding world, because I'm a former competitive bodybuilder. I hear what you're saying. You've got a lot of clients who are also in the bodybuilding world. Implants are prominent, and I think illness is prominent, but they're not putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And I feel like somehow we have to get in there.
What happens in that situation is a lot of times you'll have people that are doing, that have reverse dieting, they can't lose weight, and then the trainers start blaming them for not following through. You're getting lazy on your diet. You're not following. Then they get, the trainers get really hard on the people, and then
well, you think, and not only that, you've got like with the BII, right? Like, well, so two things. One, the methyl and the electrolyte groups, because you're just working out harder, because that's where I was, right? Like I had lost 40 pounds, and like I was becoming a fitness model, all this kind of stuff, and I was loving it. And then crash, and methyl groups, electrolytes, doing the functional medicine approach, all of that, and it really wasn't. And then the brain fog, like these women, like I know I couldn't explain myself. Yeah, Tara, like
what we have to understand from that way, what you're doing is you're doing oxidative overload. And it's kind of like, I always joke with people. I'm like, you know what? It's kind of like stepping on the gas and putting a banana in your tailpipe of your car. Okay. Would you do that? No. But that's basically what you're doing when you're getting all this excess metabolic waste, metabolic waste. You can't get it out. And then that goes into phase one.
And if you're not pooping.
Exactly. Now you're going where I'm talking about. What happens is when a lot of practitioners start addressing the body, there's phase one and phase two of the liver. The problem is the majority of the problem is, and I've been doing this subconsciously for probably about 6 years, not realizing it. There's another one called phase three. Well, the thing is when you work on the liver, the practitioners usually do phase one and phase two, but they forget phase three. So what they'll do is they'll address
zero even.
Yeah, they'll address phase one and phase two, but not address phase three. But when in reality, as a practitioner, you need to do, instead of doing 1, 2, 3, you need to do a 3, 2, 1. So if you do it 3, 2, 1, what happens is you get these.
I'm reading your question. Sorry.
You get these. You prevent the backlog, okay? Because when phase one and phase two is out of balance, or what I understand is I tell my clients, it's like your trash man's not come around fast enough to take the trash out. So instead of the trash man coming around once a week, he's coming around once every 3 or 4 weeks in some cases. And then once he takes it to the dump is overloaded. So what happens is sometimes the dump's got to get the stuff out of there first, then before putting more stuff in. So in these situations, you see a lot of female hormone imbalances. And the thing is when you start working with the bodybuilders, I had multiple cases where the functional medicine doctors wanted to put them on hydrocortisone. I said, don't you dare. You don't go there. And what happened was I already all had them on hard adrenal support. And I reevaluated the situation. I'm like, listen, it's like, even though you're not showing symptomatic, let's look at the GI tract and see what's going on. And next thing you know, their GI tract is, overloaded, but they're asymptomatic to the gut. So the doctors are not going to go to the GI tract because they don't see symptomology. So
well, and if you're a bodybuilder, you're just go, do it, get over it. Like you're not even paying attention to your body some of the time, right?
No,
like not everybody.
you're throwing amphetamines on top of it to falsely improve. You have to understand when you have these BIIs, what happens is you got people that are on amphetamines, they're doing dimethylamine, they're doing fat burners, they're getting their digestive tract going, and as soon as
Pre-workout, lots of coffee.
Yeah, they're whipping their adrenals so hard, they're whipping them poor horse, and then everybody thinks, oh my God, it's high cortisol. No, I've looked at probably 5,000 or 6,000 different profiles on people, and very rarely do I see high cortisol. And the other thing that gets messed up is the practitioner sees normal cortisol levels, and I tell the people, and then they'll bring their results in. Well, my doctor says I'm normal. I'm like, normal? I mean, you've got a fire that requires 20 firemen, and you got about 3 there. Okay, you got to bring more firemen to the fire. Even though that it looks normal, you're not having enough to deal with what
you're doing.
Other hidden fires that were not identified because of whatever reason. It may have been, again, I'm not talking negatively about practitioners, but everybody has their own scope of practice. And everybody has their own scope of knowledge. Everybody tends to have their own niche, so to speak, which is fine. But you have to pull back, and I'm known as being a generalized specialist. Is basically what I do. I'm not, because I've had cases that they're like, oh my God, this is mold. And I'm like, okay. Then all of a sudden it flips. I'm like, yeah, it looks like mold, but mold is not the primary. That's the secondary, because what happens is mold is under control, but it's causing your immune system to activate your EBV, HSV1, HSV2, and your other factors. So we need to focus on them and leave the mold okay for now. So you need to find out, as I tell my clients, who's screaming the loudest. Every client comes in, I ask, who's screaming the loudest? And that's what you have to know.
Or even like, I think if one something, whether it's EBV or you get like all these diagnoses of lupus or all of this, like, we talked about the vitamin D ratio and all of that, but I think we did that on this call, or was it pre-call? I can't remember. But when your immune system is screaming, that's a call for help. Right. If you are puffy, if you are lymphy, puffy, fat but not fat, like this is a call for help.
Right. And
like I remember going to my trainers and being like, why am I like, I forget what percent body fat, maybe it was 10. I mean, it was low for me, and or 11, and I was excited, but I look like
walking death.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, I had my ankles look like cankles, and my belly was just full. And I asked my trainer at the time, what is this? Like, I'm hardly eating anything. I'm working out like a friggin' banshee. And like, there's literally nothing more I could do to take away or add. And he just said, do more crunches, because your belly shouldn't be that poofy. And I was like a size 4 or a 4. Right.
And you bring up a really good point, because that's the electrolyte imbalance. And then you got cellular inflammation because of the cell danger response. One of the major tests that I use in just about everybody that comes through the door is the omega quant. The omega quant has been a godsend for so many people, because what happens is they're taking all these omega 3s in the wrong ratio. And because they're metabolic imbalances, it's, you think you should be taking fish oils with a two, your EPA should be 2-to-1 to DHA ratio. And actually, in reality, your body has an overload of DHA because of the cell danger response. Because the DHA rises compensatory mechanism for the cell danger response. And the higher the DHA, what that does is that pushes a pathway called DAMPs and PAMPs. And what DAMPs and PAMPs will do is DAMPs and PAMPs will shut down your thyroid like that. And then what happens is you see these people come in with, Danielle, I showed you, did I not? That you had that alter ratio. And I said, that's a cell danger response. And then you got these people that are eating salmon and doing their whole organic eggs, which is fine. But the problem is
doing it all.
they're eating the wrong type of fats based upon their nutritional biochemistry. And then I'll go in and they're like, oh, I'm doing fish oils. But okay, the more DHA you take, the more you shut down your, your delta 60 saturase, which is creating GLA. Well, you need GLA in order to uptake zinc. So if you're GLA deficient, you're going to be zinc deficient. So you have to look at the metabolic pathways based upon the, the transport system. It's just not take the supplement anymore. It's evolved into a whole new science, but more than a science, it's an art form. That's the way I look at it. I'm a nutritional, I'm a Picasso of the biochemistry, nutritional biochemistry, because I don't follow protocols. Because everybody asks me, what's your protocol for Lyme? What's your protocol for mold? I'm like, I don't have one. It just doesn't work. And when you take care of the cellular inflammation, I've had cases, maybe not BII, but other cases that have Lyme and co-infections that have been on a mess load of antibiotics, racked out their guts. But I'm said, listen, because you have the cellular inflammation going on, you may think you have 3 gas lines to the fire, but instead you have 6 burning. So you maybe take care of all the 3, but then your immune system then your doctor or practitioner is missing the 3 others that are the driving force. So if you have all this internal inflammation going on, hidden inflammation that you don't going on, no wonder your Lyme is not working or your BII treatment's not working from your functional medicine doctor. They're missing the simple things.
And right there, so post-surgery, and then for us who get that 3-month slam, like this is that, or could be part of that. Like we don't know 100%, but exactly what Shawn said. Like, so for those of us who have explanted and are still sick, but we were fine for a while, like this is a big part of that equation, that inflammation, that where's the fire, fire in the hole kind of thing is what IFM teaches, but where's the fire? And sometimes it's because we didn't take the capsule out. Sometimes it's because we still have inflammation in here.
Right.
Sometimes it's because we did fat transfer too soon. Sometimes it's because, our hormones, our air, like it's what we're taking in, food, environment, alcohol, pesticides, all that shit that we haven't addressed. There's a lot of women, I hope, that will watch this, Shawn, that are eating right, clean, fairly good. There's, on some level, there's so much we can do. We're using organic dyes, not wearing makeup or organic stuff. Like, so the external, and as far as I know, internally, we're good. What do you suggest for them? Like, and they're still hurting, or they're still depressed, or they're still,
And before we go any further, can you hold on to that? Because we have a couple of questions that I feel like we could.
Oh, yay. I'm not watching. So that I was.
Yeah, that's okay. That's all right. I was just trying to, you were
I wanted organic acid test to come up.
What do you call it? Geeking out, right? He was, you were.
I was so geeking out. I love you, Shawn.
Okay. So, and I can put this one up here because there's no name on it, but, do you find that after implants are removed, your clients are more sensitive to too much working out? So, for example, lose weight and keep my system running optimally when I do light training. But when I do heavy training, I start going into adrenal fatigue. And again, I can't recover.
That's an excellent question. And the way I would respond to that is there's a technique, there's a principle I have called BEG, biliary endocrine gut issue. What happens is your adrenals are already smoked to begin with. Okay. This is why I like to prep people coming into explant, because what happens is it's not about pushing the adrenal glands. It's about supporting them. So I would give, like, instead of using like adrenal cortex and, heavy pushers, I would use like holy basil, maybe ashwagandha, maybe Eleuthera. Eleuthero has been a godsend for most of the women, because if they have a comp gene expression, which makes them a little prone to anxiety because they're not breaking down their catecholamines or which, as Dr. Jess would refer to, just imagine a cat on a tin roof going, you know. So, and in that situation, as your cortisol drops, your adrenaline's going to pick up. And then once your adrenaline picks up, your gene kicks in. Because if your comp gene expression, if your MAL-B that you can't break down your dopamine fast enough, or your slow comped that you can't break it down, as your cortisol goes down, a natural just a natural response is your adrenaline comes up, your dopamine comes up. And then you need cortisol in order to break down that dopamine into epinephrine, norepinephrine. That's why when you look at the organic acid test on number 35, the deviation from the the VMA to HMA ratio, that is an indication of adrenal insufficiency. And what we do is by looking at adrenal insufficiency in that pathway, I'll go and look at their platelet. I'll go look at their platelet counts. If the platelet counts are below 260, 270, that's usually an indication of functional low cortisol levels. And then after that, what I'll do is I'll have them. They'll normally have a adrenal profile from Dutch, which is the complete hormone test, and then that will go show. I said, remember I talked about that 35 in the organic acid test, and then I told you about your platelet counts being low, and then all of a sudden they come back and their cortisol levels are low normal. So you can actually look at other pathways to identify the red flags. Because just looking at CBC, you can tell you can tell how the adrenals are working. And I'm usually 90% on target because I have multiple data backing it up from other tests. So in this situation, great question. Remember, you can't go from Philadelphia to California on a quarter tank of gas. It just ain't going to work. Okay, you got to have enough gas in your gas tank in order to burn. And sometimes a lot of problems people have enough gas in their gas tank, but the problem is they don't put their foot on the throttle because the body's in a cell danger response. So your body, when you do like a cortisol saliva test, okay, on the cortisol saliva test, everything looks normal. That's your gas tank. The problem is you don't see how much of that gas is actually, you don't see your fuel efficiency because you don't have the Dutch test.
Right.
You have to have the free levels, which are shown in saliva, but you got to have them metabolized. Because if you don't have that comparison, the clinician is missing the total picture. Because everything could look normal, and you give thyroid, and you be completely backwards and doing more damage. So when we do assessments, I like to use the Dutch complete test, hormone test, and actually, if you get it through your practitioner, it is reimbursed through insurance. So if you have good insurance, it can be reimbursed. And there are codes. When I have my clients that come to me, I have it ran through a practitioner, and I always give them the codes and stuff for them to submit it back through insurance. So looking at your adrenals, great question. Looking at the adrenals, you're not going to, if you don't have no gas in your gas tank, you're not going to recover. So in that situation, you need to do adrenal support. You need to work on circadian pattern. Are you going to bed right? Circadian pattern has been the biggest one that can reset the cortisol patterns the fastest. The problem is what happens is when we go to bed, when you go to bed, you put your phone on recharge. When you wake up, it says 100%. A lot of these people that are having problems with BII, they're going to bed, they're putting their body on recharge, they're waking up 10%. And with 10%, then what happens is you're not running on your primaries, you need to run on your secondaries, which is your turbo boosters, which is your adrenaline, your dopamine levels. So this is where the anxiety comes in. This is where, I feel anxious all the time because you don't have enough cortisol present in order to get through your daily. Or you may do a cortisol saliva test and you say, wow, your practitioner says, wow, your cortisol levels are great. No, they're not, because your cortisol levels should be much higher than what they're seeing there. It's false representation. If I have a client come in, it's like my doctor said my cortisol level is good. I'm basically, I have to agree with it. It's full of shit. And here's the reason why: because you don't have enough gas in your gas tank to do your outside your human functionality. Okay, just to go through your daytime, you might have enough. But if you go to the gym, if you go do something strenuous, or you're through a stressful, situation, you got to have more gas in your gas tank. And that's why these people are crashing.
And I have to say too, I think in my limited 2.5 years of experience with the BII, the women who I see are overachievers, right? Like they're people who want to do more, please more, be more, get it done, take care of the husband, the family, the pets, the universe, like these are women who are just go, go, go. And
Yep.
for them to take a minute for themselves is is a lot, and that almost takes more energy and cortisol, and so Shawn, so I digressed a little bit, but I'm curious, and I'd like to just caveat, like I know the answer, but I would like you to tell people what makes cortisol. Like we know about the circadian rhythm, but I'm curious, like how can they feed, how can someone nourish themselves to have, one, create more cortisol, because cortisol can be a good thing. And then we talked about circadian rhythm to actually, be able to get in sync. But like two questions, actually. What can they do to bring the cortisol? And then how do people look for a good practitioner? Like, because how do they find a you or a me, like, or a Tara even, like, right, like, or a navigator? Let's call us navigators, whatever. But those are two questions I have in 15 minutes.
Well, we have two other questions here too.
Ah, come on.
Which ones do you want to do first, Danielle? Can I ask the other girls questions?
The people's.
Okay.
Damn
it. So can you still have inflammation after explant, even though
yes, next. No, just kidding.
blood markers are super low?
First of all, C-reactive protein's the biggest bunch of malarkey there is. I mean, I have people that have Lyme that are bedridden, that have C-reactive proteins lower than people that are normal. So, inflammatory markers, there's so many variables that can affect that. And I think unless you have like traumatic brain injury, you'll see a high C-reactive protein. But otherwise, they're not real true indicators. Okay. True indicators is you've got to look at the person's, if their cortisol levels are low, DHA levels low, they're inflamed. Okay. If they're lacking the arachidonic acid to EPA ratio at the cell level, they're inflamed. And if your pro-inflammatories are not matched by your anti-inflammatories, you're going to be inflamed. Okay. So inflammation is one of those trickiest things because as practitioners and stuff, we're guided by the paper and instead of looking at the actual person. And sometimes you have to go inside the cell to find out if they're inflamed or not. And when I do the omega quant, the ratios I've come up with are actually validated in clinical documentation of where they should be. A lot of labs and stuff use false representation. They'll just give you like a less than 5, but then most of the data is based on other markers, and that's what I go by. I go by clinical studies. I'm a data guy.
Okay.
So there's multiple different ways to look at inflammatory pathways. More the person's symptom. I have a saying. It's like we're not fat, we're inflamed. And I think it's like you need to put like that. I'm like, when people walk around, it's like I'm not fat, I'm inflamed. They should have a T-shirt like that.
It should be right where the breasts are. Right?
Well,
Danielle, not a bulldog.
Danielle, did you say we're going to make T-shirts for our show? Maybe that should be our show.
Exactly.
So, okay, then the next question. Oh.
No, go ahead.
It's our girl April. It's our girl April. April, don't apologize.
I love April.
So it's actually, I'm going to add to this too. Her question is, can ladies that had silicone left in the lymph nodes, what can ladies do with silicone left in the lymph nodes?
Danielle,
so that's
you go. You, Shawn.
When it comes to this scenario, there's still a lot of research needs to be done on this topic. There's a lot of controversy with how you can get it out. There's binders that we can use. Toxo-Prevent is one of them. There's zeolite. There's chlorella. Danielle and I were back and forth on this question through email, and we still, there's just hypothesis out there. There's no clinical data to really support a clear answer to that question. Danielle, could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, and so there's not enough data, right? The silicone that remains and alters. I wish Maria was on, because there was a doctor we talked to, and how the silicone and how when it attaches to carbon, it does something different. There's data that shows that it goes throughout the body. Your body is amazing. When we can negotiate the inflammation, the cell danger response, the mitochondrial dysfunction, all of this other stuff, when we give the body what it needs and we help it move in a way that facilitates that, from the autonomic nervous system, from your thoughts to the autonomic nervous systems, from core beliefs to how it manifests in your body, to lymphatic drainage, to EMDR, to how we hold on to things, thoughts and metals and all of that, to decreasing the inflammation. All of it is not in this. You can't do one without affecting the other. And in my world, and how I participate in all this for myself and clients, is we attack all of it.
Right.
And whether or not the silicone gets left in the body, I don't know if it deposits and it causes some, adverse events or that kind of thing. I know that the people I've dealt with that have silicone ruptured throughout their body, as they, let's say, grow or nourish themselves in the way SHAWN's been talking about all hour, is it does shift and heal, because your body will compensate. And then we deal with the compensations, whether it's a postural strain or a breathing pattern or a pressure pattern, like all of that, like it's all interplay. So there's huge hope and optimization for vitality, even if silicone is in your armpit or is in your chest or is in your liver or that kind of thing. And we can do things to mitigate and migrate, but the biggest thing is nourish body, spirit, soul, and get through those core beliefs on some level, the frustrations that made us get implants in the first place.
And you bring up really, really good points. And one of the factors I want to bring forth is just a case the other day. It's living in a toxic environment. You cannot heal in a toxic environment. Lady had breast explants and she was still having problems. And then all of a sudden I got her organic acid test back. I'm like, we talked about mold. It wasn't on radar, but as soon as I got the organic acid test back, I'm like, we need to take a deeper dive in this. And she actually found like mold in the attic. And we don't know how much that was in play that could cross over into what they thought was BII. So
yeah,
you have to look at this from a
exactly.
There's no one solution. There's no one protocol. What we have to do is we have to pull ourselves back as a practitioner, take a look at the lifestyle, take a look at the mindset, take a look at the structural imbalances too. Because if you're structurally out of alignment with your cervical of your neck.
Oh my God, that's a whole other podcast here.
Exactly. But the C1, C2 is one of the biggest ones that cause a lot of problems, I see. And, look at the structural imbalance. If the structural alignment's off, your whole body's going to be off. I mean, just the other day I had a person 25 years IBS. And I'm like, hey, have you looked at your ileocecal valve? Like, what's that? I said, it can often get stuck open and your body can translocate the bacteria from upper GI tract to lower GI tract. Well, she went and it was opened up and her chiropractor put it back. And next thing you know, she's like, a week later, she's like, all my bloating and stuff is gone. I'm like, yeah, because you have to, there's an old saying, you have to look through the forest to see the trees. And that is the implementation that myself, Danielle, and Tara bring in these cases. You have to pull yourself back. You can't be a specialist, okay? You have to be a generalist. And that's what we are. All three of us are generalists. And that is a unique characteristic in world of functional medicine today. And again, functional medicine is great. It teaches the principles, but sometimes we get caught in our niches. And that's fine, okay? Because if you go to a Lyme doctor, you have Lyme. You go to mold, you have mold. But the thing is you have to treat everybody.
But why do you have all of these activated? Like, there are some people who get Lyme that are fine. There's some people who have EBV that are fine. So it's really,
it's called your cellular resilience. Okay. Cellular resilience. It's your genetic threshold. The stronger your adrenals are, the more likely your genes are going to express. And then your genes actually have a direct correlation to your adrenal function. And then a lot of people don't know, cortisol is produced in the adrenal gland. Partly true, but you know where it's really produced? In the mitochondrion. So the problem is, again, go back to the mitochondrion. Sometimes you have to support the mitochondrion, and because you need mitochondrion in order to actually get the pregnenolone pathway going, because of the cytochrome P450 that cleaves off the star with the cholesterol. So there's a whole hormonal pathway that comes off of that, but it's actually driven through the mitochondrion. So if your mitochondrion are off, so that's when people have low people want to have low adrenals. You also want to think mitochondrion, but sometimes you have to get the adrenals up to handle the power coming from the 500 horsepower engine. Otherwise, your transmission that's only designed to hold 250 is going to blow. So you have to have everything in sequence, and that's the same thing with the adrenals and thyroid. Your engine and transmission. You get the thyroid going, you get a 500 horsepower engine, but then the transmission can only handle so much, and your rear end can't handle the torque. As soon as you step on the gas, you're going to blow out your ass end. When you use simple analogies like this, people get it. And it's all about, as we come from this standpoint, it's all about education. It's all about getting information to your client. When doctors write this, I have doctors write this elaborate PhD level, and I'm like, this is all great if you have a PhD level, but we call it what is it? Neurotic masturbation, as we call it. It's when doctors go off and try to impress people with their knowledge, but the point doesn't get across, and you get these stare faces. So when people come into my practice, they're left with an educational standpoint to understand how cellular cellular inflammation works, and how the liver works, but from a standpoint that they can understand by using simple analogies. And it all goes back to the simple philosophy is listen, if I can teach a 6-year-old nutritional biochemistry, then a doctor should be able to handle the same thing. But the problem is a lot of the doctors have been taught by pharma. Mm-hmm. When they come in, you're talking a foreign language to them. And a lot of practitioners they actually mentor. They're like, Shawn, it's like it's all like learning medicine all over again. I said, yeah, because you're doing preventative care. Right. You're not doing ambulatory or rescue or ambulance medicine, as we call it. Ambulance chasing.
Yeah.
Right.
And 2 quick things. So the thyroid, if you're having thyroid issues, to me, that's another symptom of crap happening in the rest of the body, whether it be inflammation, mitochondrial dysfunction, adrenal fatigue. Like that is your body saying, help, right? It's not really it is a thyroid thing, but that's a symptom of what else is happening.
Fantastic point. Client the doctor wanted to put her on thyroid. She had all kinds of gut issues. Her gut was a mess. Her hormones were a mess. She had negative responses to progesterone. I told, don't you dare go on thyroid medicines because her adrenals were down. And then I said, let's take a deeper dive. As soon as I saw what was going on in your gut, I said, your gut is so inflamed, it's pulling down your adrenals. As you pull down your adrenals, it's messing up your thyroid. So what we did was, by addressing the GI tract, we corrected the thyroid, we corrected the adrenals. Then by correcting the adrenals, we corrected the estrogen dominance. The estrogen dominance then triggered and corrected the thyroid. So here's a doctor that want to be put on thyroid medicines, hydrocortisones, and hormones all at the same time, when all they had to do was take a step further and look at the underlying pathology of why this is occurring. And one of the best scenarios that I can tell you is or best pieces of advice from practitioner, keep asking why till you can't ask why no longer. That has been my motto, because keep digging.
Yeah, and for those with the thyroid, and SHAWN, and I know we're almost close to the hour, but that estrogen dominance is a big deal because, one, breast implants are xenoestrogens.
Yep.
Right. And so, and estrogen dominance doesn't just mean you have too much estrogen. It could mean that you don't have enough progesterone. And for those of us who are of a certain age, you know, we'll be told that it's menopause or early perimenopause. And, you know, like, so even if you get a Dutch test and that kind of thing with the implants in, no, I don't know how that skews, and maybe that's another day for another conversation. But, you know, like, I find that estrogen dominance in the next 5 years, we're going to realize that for women, well, for men too, actually, you know, that's going to be a big deal. And with insulin resistance and I mean, like the whole 9 yards, that's going to be a precursor to chronic disease for sure.
When you look at these breast implant cases, the number one thing I see is elevated SHBG, and nobody's looking at it.
Nobody's looking at it.
Elevated SHBG is a warning sign that tells there's some kind of systemic inflammation going on. 9 times 10, it's out of your GI tract or liver.
What's hormone-binding globulin, people? Just for people to know.
Sex hormone-binding globulin is a protein that gets released in inflammatory responses. It's different than ferritin, but it's usually gut or liver based. And 9 times out of 10, male, female, once you resolve the GI tract, once you resolve the biliary pathway, the endocrine system will tend to rebalance itself and it will go back into normal. So that way, you know, you might get testosterone level, you know, you see your total testosterone level of 60 or 70, which is really, really high. But with your SHBG being so high, and if you're on birth control, if you stop birth control, even 5 to 10 years later, your SHBG could still be elevated because your body couldn't metabolize the medicine out of it properly. Okay. And SHBG is also driven through inflammatory pathways, which is through your gram-negative bacteria that's coming from your GI tract, your E. coli, Klebsiella pseudomonas. What they'll do is those are histamine producers. Histamine drives up estrogen dominance. That will jam up your beta-glucuronidase. Those pathways.
And those women with those rashes and the itch at night and all of that. Hello.
Yep, it's all interconnected. You just have to, as Elizabeth said, you just got to learn to connect the dots.
So SHBG, is that right?
Everybody that has SIBO,
sex
hormone-binding globulin.
And how do you test for that, SHAWN?
You can actually, the Dutch is one of them when you see low testosterone, but you see higher testosterone on a total. But you can also see it on just a simple blood work. A lot of my clients, their doctors are stuck, you know, they're stuck in the mud. So I'm like, listen, we don't need to worry about that. Okay. If you have a doctor on board, fantastic, but you can get online testing done. And I have a whole panel of online testing that you can do. That's probably about $3,000 or $4,000. But by getting it through this online lab, it's like $350. And that's standard that's the standard profile that I use when people come from overseas.
Okay. So we're gonna.
Do you do any lab tests now, or sorry?
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean, on Danielle, on that original form that I sent you, that has all the lists.
Yeah.
That has all of them. Sometimes they've been modified, but you can get like the Dutch, like the GI Maps test. You can get that without a practitioner. You can go online, order it. Yes, it's $445, but by getting that information, it could save you tens of thousands of dollars in the long run.
Right.
Not being able to work, not being able to enjoy, being bedridden. So it's an investment up front, but like with anything, when you buy a house, you have to pay things up front, you know, but the benefits long term are priceless, can be priceless.
Right, for sure.
I know the Dutch test is now you have to have a practitioner, at least in the US. Do you know if Genova, I think do you have to have who else does things that would give us clues to our well-being?
Danielle, I'm gonna will you guys talk about that after?
Yeah, we'll do that.
Because I gotta
no, this is actually for everybody, because this is something they can bring. This isn't, and I don't mind staying late, Tara. Sorry.
I'm cool with that too. Basically, when it comes to organic acid test, my labs used to have it. My labs has I normalize my testing to bare minimum. I've learned to look at all the intricacies of the testing and look at the course correlations. So that way, when people come in, they don't have to spend $5,000-$6,000 on testing. It's ridiculous. So you can use the organic acid testing from Great Plains. You can use the GI Maps, which is from a profile a link I can send you. You can use the Dutch test from your practitioner. If I'm probably going to be offering the Dutch test alone, just on a standalone, to where people could just do the test to pay the $250 or whatever it is. I don't mark it up. It is what it is. Whatever I get it for, I pass it on. Just pay for my time to review it. And then once I get done reviewing it, I will actually say, hey, based upon this test, these are the next set of testings that I would recommend. These are some of the recommendations. But remember, without going through detailed history, I can't give an individualized approach. I can make recommendations. I record it for people, but I'm usually spot on with the recommendations I've made because I've seen thousands of these, and there's always plan A, plan B, and plan C. So the Dutch test, a lot of practitioners can order. I order it through a practitioner they work with. So, and then the GI Maps test, the organic acid test, I can, a lot of practitioners can order. Sometimes you can order it online. I think Gut Institute may have it potentially. There's a lot of places online that you look. I like to use the organic acid test from the Great Plains versus Genova, because one of the components, one of the things that Genova missed is the mold. Because a lot of times when I do the organic acid test from interpreting properly, you can actually save your client $300 from doing the mycotoxin test. Because after looking at cross references, you can look at the organic acid test, say, hey, your probability of having Stachybotrys or Aspergillus or Penicillium is high probable. But then your history is going to confirm it, or they'll take a deeper dive, or they'll be like, oh, I forgot, when you go through testing results, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, I lived in New York in a basement, in the basement of an old building,
During 9/11, yeah.
During 9/11, exactly. I'm like, why didn't you put that? You're thinking to yourself, okay, nice of you telling me now, but the thing is when you go through these testing, it will jar their memory, for what it is. Or you'll see in the organic acid test, oh, by the way, I see you're allergic to corn, or you have a cross-reactivity to corn. Oh my God, I hadn't suspicion of that, but it was there, So.
And make sure you guys, so you can call Great Plains and they can actually find you a practitioner that will order the test for you. But you've got to make sure you have a experienced clinician, navigator, facilitator, coach that can read that. And not everybody can. So find out how many they've done and make sure because Great Plains will give you like their generic disposition on each lab. And that's decent, but it doesn't give you the correlations to who you be as a single individual. It's a statistical report. So you need someone like Shawn, myself, or someone who has done, I mean, I go to Shawn when I have my, when I don't know what to do. Like, I'm like, Shawn, you know, what's the hidden code here? I can't see it. And he helps me out. So, you know, and I love that Shawn does not charge extra for his testing, you know, because I just love it. It's just a thing. So,
And
Tara, I'm sure we have like 10,000 questions. I'll shut up now.
No, actually, no. I think people are just intently listening, so you're good.
So just
like this has been Christmas for me.
Just to summarize things so people can understand, when clients come in, I like to do an assessment. Okay, once we have that assessment, then testing is suggested. And what I do is I do a cost analysis. So there are no surprises ahead of time. And one of the unique things that I do is I actually set time aside to review their case, to work with other practitioners. So that way, when clients come in, you know, if I get a question that I say, hey, I got a person who's got emotional issues, I don't know where to go, Danielle is a phenomenal resource for emotional coding and things along those lines. So we have to all work together as a collaborative effort, because no one person knows all the answers. And as practitioners and stuff, we have to put our own egos aside and do what's best. And I'm not afraid, you know, I've been in consults and they're like, who are you talking to? I'm like, I'm talking to Ben Lynch. It's like, you're talking to Ben Lynch? I turn it around and next thing you know, on video, there's Ben Lynch. You know, so therefore and Ben Lynch is really, you know, knowledgeable about a lot of different things. But we need to all work together. And that's the overall goal. And know when to refer when it gets out of line. Like I did today, I'm like, hey, you know, my expertise is nutritional biochemistry, but when it comes to the silicone and the toxins and how that intervenes and stuff, I'm still learning about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's why Danielle is great about it. She's already done her research. She's already been through it. So we just need to all work together. We need to all bring our knowledge bases together for benefit. And eventually what you'll start to see is you start to see patterns happen. And that's what I'm starting to develop as I see more of these cases. You start to see these hidden patterns where it's like, okay, you know what to do. Or eventually you just get into a sequence saying, listen, you're a complex case. And again, cases that come in, it's not about curing. It's about giving it's about giving the person a better quality of life. I mean, if you're constipated for 2 weeks and the next thing you know, you're going to the bathroom 3 times a day after 4 or 5 months,
which is brilliant.
Which is, you know, that's like a godsend. And we take that as, you know, granted. When it doesn't, we take it for granted when we don't have the problem. But for a person who's constipated, it's a nightmare. So
and sometimes you don't know it's a nightmare.
No, the thing is I have people who's like, Shawn, I'm going 3 times a day. I'm like, well, welcome to the world being normal. Because what they understand is people don't know what normal is. Right. You know, if you're in a bathroom once every 3 days ever since you were born, then all of a sudden 20 years later, you're going 3 times a day. You think you got diarrhea. No. You've been
once a week should have been great.
Yeah. And the analogy you all know is that, yeah, you've been full of shit all your life. Okay.
My mom says that about me. No, I agree. Shawn, I can't thank you enough. And there's so many more questions, I'm sure.
Yes.
And I have to say, you know, Dr. Lynch I know he has people feed him for knowledge too. We can't know everything about everything. It just can't. And one of my goals is, oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think Danielle's ultimate goal is what you just spoke of, is educating and helping to get the word out there about everything that you spoke on today, so that women, not just breast implant illness women and men everywhere, don't have to struggle with any of these chronic illnesses anymore. Right, Danielle?
I mean, even those with autoimmune without breast implants,
mm-hmm.
Like I get the clients, Oh, it's funny, Sean, because Jess made me make my declaration, right? And like what I wanted to do, and I wanted to help the people who uh, couldn't find help, right? So that's what's showing up,
Yeah.
and people with lupus, people with I'm saying it wrong, ankylosing spondylitis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, and they just want different. They want more than, people with the rheumatoid and the different things.
Right.
They don't necessarily want off of Plaquenil, but there's got to be more, and more than just the diet change, right?
Well, a lot of people that have those conditions and stuff, they're just a lead-in to other hidden conditions that you have to take a deeper dive in as a practitioner.
Right. And it's the same thing with breast implant illness, I think.
Mhm.
Or maybe, I mean, it's not, I don't mean necessarily it's the same issue, but the cascading of events, like, taking out the implants is the biggest thing I think you can do for better health. Especially, well, just period.
Well, the thing you have to look at this too, Danielle, is if you pull yourself back and look at the pathology of what this is all based on, I visualize every case coming to me as an autistic child. My chemistry is based upon autism because of Asperger's, but that domino effect of all of those imbalances in my body permeate into different expressions in people. So when people come into me, I go into a mental capacity of, I'm looking at an autistic child. It's just they have the same chemistries, cancer, Lyme, lupus. Every single condition is based upon the biochemical pathways of that of autism. And once you understand autism, you have a broad spectrum understanding of how all these chronic illnesses work at the cellular level. Even though, and I always joke with people, I said, I don't want to alarm you, but you have the same chemistry or results as an autistic child, but your expressions are completely different, even though they're the same results. And that's where the genetics comes in at too. It's all about, yes, you have these results, but because you have the resilience to deal with it, you're not expressing those genes. But if you don't watch yourself and you continue on this pathway, these are where you may potentially end up if you don't watch it.
Right.
So
brilliant.
The genes are basically a map. They're a set of cards that we've been dealt. How we play those cards is up to us.
Agreed.
Some of those things we have control, other things we don't have control. And as a practitioner, we'd have to look at the things that we both have control of and things that we don't have control of. And then we have to just help them play them cards the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of things we have the ability to nourish.
Correct.
And then the body does wonderful things, because I really think that the body wants to have vitality, and it will always lean towards the side of giving you the best it can give you.
One of the best pieces of advice from that situation is this, that my counselor told me. We need to focus on the things we can control versus the things we cannot control. Once we identify that principle, you can do amazing things, both from a spiritual standpoint, a physiological standpoint, to bring the body back into a balance.
Amen.
Agreed.
Shawn, thank you so much for being here. Danielle, I can absolutely see why you adore Shawn, and I do now as well. I love your analogies. I love the way your mind works, and just having you was a true blessing for all that we're able to watch now, and all that will see the replay here and on YouTube and wherever they might catch it. So thank you so much. Before I let you go, will you promise to come back?
Absolutely. And as I get as I delve more in these cases, I'll find more pathways that are not being assessed through, and I'll start to look at the correlations of the genetics. A lot of the pathways coming in are NAT, BHMT, COMT, MAL-A, MAL-B. A lot of it is BHMT. It's usually BHMT gene expression. That's an internal stressor. So then that's where people like Danielle, who's a great functional medicine practitioner, but she's got that spirituality, that emotional ability to connect with people. And sometimes it's not all about biochemistry. Sometimes it's all about just, creating a new map of reality that we've been falsely programmed, from our traumatic or traumatic experiences,
Yeah.
whether current, past, or transgenerational.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's another. That's
a whole other ball game.
A whole other talk. Before I let you go, I see we have one last question. DNA. We've heard that breast implants alter your DNA. Do you recommend having DNA retested after explant?
If you're talking about genetics, your genetics and DNA are two separate things. Okay, the DNA you're given, that's the DNA that you have. Okay, whether you've tested your genes before or test your genes after, they won't change. That's the card. That's the cards you've been dealt.
It's how they're expressing that changes. Is that right?
It's how the expressing their changes, and also the imbalances within those pathways that can affect the gene expressions. So if you have one that may be yellow, comped yellow, but you're totally expressing as red, there's usually, different factors within that pathway that are in balance that's causing that gene to look one way but express completely opposite. That's why when, genetics are great, but my philosophy is I want to see which genes are expressing. If you know which genes are expressing, then you don't need to see them on paper.
Okay.
And the organic acid test can help you show what's expressing.
Yeah.
And just as a caveat, it's not always MTHFR.
Right.
Please don't call me with that. I mean, come on.
MTHFR is a real motherfucker, but the one is FUT2, which means fucked up totally times 2.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm FUT2.
FUT2 people are the most challenging cases because that's where doctors are totally missing the boat in regards to addressing the GI tract, and also the B12 transport system. And those are the ones that are more challenging cases. I'm an FUT2 triple homozygous. It's been my nemesis ever since day one. When you have FUT2 expressing, your gut, trying to heal your gut's impossible because you lack the prebiotic that your body does not make. So therefore, you have to find ways around it. Because if you're taking prebiotics, which are fun, as soon as you stop them with FUT2, they're gone. You're back to baseline within 2 weeks.
Oh God! And try taking prebiotics and probiotics with SIBO.
Well, it depends on what.
But anyway, I gotta go.
There's a whole different scenario behind that.
I know.
Can we have you on and just talk about guts and poop?
Oh, Danielle and I could do that all day long.
Yes, I think we could do that.
Love poop.
Let's do that. Okay, all right. So we're gonna go, and Sean, don't hang up because I want to pick your brain a little bit on the other side of this. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. Those of you who lasted the entire time, you're awesome, and we love you. And we'll see you guys.
We'll post Sean's contact information in the thread, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Sean's contact info will be there, and please reach out to him. He's obviously just so knowledgeable. And thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Danielle. I love you guys.
Good pleasure.
All right. Bye.